Welcome to the Quantum Guide Show, where you will find interesting guests and discussions about cutting-edge topics to assist you on your journey. The Quantum Guide Show is ideally suited to the newly awakened and for those who feel isolated by their newfound beliefs. The mind, body, and spirit thrive when we have a mission, and there is no greater mission than to become the change that we wish to see in the world. So hit the like button, subscribe to my YouTube, Odyssey, and Telegram channels, and share this show with your friends. Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. To celebrate our 100th episode of the Quantum Guide Show, I'm happy to bring back two returning guests, Aurora Seraphine and Dave Petrella. As many of you know, Dave is also my co-host on the Aliens and Astrology Podcast, which airs twice each month. Today, I'm hosting a roundtable discussion about our ET experiences, and I thought we could start with each of us giving a brief introduction to the work that we do, and then talk about what each of our contact experiences was like. As experiencers, we each have a unique perspective and message to share with the world of humankind. Hi, Aurora and Dave. So good to see you and have you back on the Quantum Guide Show.
Hi, thank you so much.
So, Aurora, do you want to start with a brief introduction?
Absolutely. So my name is Aurora Seraphine, and I've been in the alternative health world for the better part of my life. I started out in massage therapy, and gradually over time, with my music background from the time I was about 4 years old, I just created a fusion from, everything with my music, with healing arts, and also, that we're talking about today are, experiences with paranormal experiences, extraterrestrial experiences. All of that was, really, those were all big contributing factors to the offering that I now share, which falls under the umbrella of integrative holistic healthcare practitioner, but in a very broad brushstroke. So I offer many different things, including intuitive services with people, which, we play with a number of different modalities, and really it's really about just creating like a one-on-one opportunity for people to dive into the truth of who they are and sort of reverse engineer their own body, mind, spirit from the inside out, and come to some core truths and fundamental realities about our true nature by just sort of weaving and unweaving things that are, getting to our core truth and letting go of all of the stuff that's not the truth of who we are. So I also offer services through the medium of hypnosis, which to me has been so not only fascinating, but liberating in so many ways. And that modality in particular, I feel like just really helps us kind of get back to recovering all of the amazing hidden gems within, recovering all of our abilities as seers, as oracles, as divine beings, to be able to remember who we are, where we've come from, where we've been, and where we're going. So that's another one of my offerings. And finally, sound healing, as well as body work, I still provide as well. But the sound healing is really a lot of fun for me because I do hypnosis. A lot of it is coming from a deep trance state. So I get into that space myself when I'm offering that service. And a lot of amazing things take place from that space. So it's really a lot of fun to offer.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes. And the links will be in the description below. So do check out. I've listed all the times that Aurora and Dave have been on the Quantum Guide show, so you can catch up with their work. And Dave, you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Well, Karen, first of all, I just want to say congratulations on your 100th episode. It's a monumental achievement. I am personally very grateful for your work, for the wonderful guests that you brought on, through the years here. And of course, you were already going for, I think, at least a year when I started podcasting. So it was a big inspiration for me, and I still watch every show you do. So I'm just so grateful for that. So thank you. Okay, and as for me, you guys probably know, my essential bio if you've seen my shows, Aliens and Astrology with Karen. I have my own podcast on my YouTube channel now as well, where I'm going to be inviting guests to talk about essentially whatever is topical or whatever is interesting at the time, and to try to bring more understanding forward so that we can actually make some good progress as humanity. So I'm a tropical astrologer. It's also called Western astrology, full services for Western astrology. And I also offer health tips. It's principles of what I call pre-Ayurvedic medicine. Ayurveda is the core ancient wisdom and medicine out of ancient India. So its principles essentially came before that, which is essentially about fasting and about oils. So those two components that you really need to understand. So I do offer that, those health tips and health services in that field. And then I also do spiritual guidance. And I've read many, many, many of the spiritual texts throughout the world. I continue to do that to try to broaden the understanding and to, basically what I'm interested in doing. I'm not interested in forcing my opinion or anyone else's opinion on anyone. All I do is I say, here's, I put a few things in front on the table, maybe sometimes more than a few things. And I say, okay, so this is what we have to look at, and, choose what's going to work best for you. Just respect the world, natural world, respect each other. Don't go out purposely trying to hurt people. And I'm good with that. You want to be Hindu, great. If you want to be Catholic, great. If you want to be Christian, great. Does not bother me. If you don't want to be any of those, no problem. But the thing that I look for is how are you serving your fellow humankind, basically. How are you treating each other? Are you helping and bringing understanding and bringing good things into the world? That's what I'm interested in. So I also do spiritual guidance. If people are interested in that service, you can find me on Facebook, of course, under Dave Petrella, and YouTube under the same name. And then Instagram is Dave Petrella 12.
Wonderful, wonderful. And for those of you who are not familiar with my work, I'm sort of a shamanic guide. I've had ET experience that's been extremely positive, and through that experience, I've had received downloads, which I have put into a free online course that everything you need to be healthy and happy. But I also offer services for people who have unconventional lifestyles. So it doesn't matter what you've chosen for your own identity. It doesn't matter what you've chosen for a lifestyle. It doesn't matter what you've chosen as a belief system. I can support you in your journey. And I also offer some lifestyle coaching and energy work. I don't do, hypnosis or massage therapy, and I'm not an astrologer, but I have many ways of accessing other dimensions and pulling information through that may be really good for you and maybe bring you comfort and joy and peace and all the things, because I think the three of us would all agree we can become the change that we want to see in the world, and we can offer tips and resources to other people who are also on their journey. Now, more recently, I've branched out to the ascension coaching and energy work through orgone generators, and just basically I'm someone here who believes in you and believes in your experience, and it doesn't matter what it is. So I myself am very pan-spiritual, pan-gender, pansexual. I don't have any one core belief system, and I'm able to migrate over and offer support services to people who have different lifestyles, because the mainstream is not good for many of us. And so that's basically a little bit about what I do. And you can check me out at my website if you want to see all my resources. Many of them are free resources, no strings attached. So I have that too. So today we're going to talk a bit about our ET experiences. And lately what's happened is sort of the whole genre has been shook up, because one person in particular, Corey Good, has come forward and basically said that he made up his story and he wants the intellectual property of the details. And there's so many people who sort of built their stories on his stories, and it's like a house of cards. It's all kind of come down and destabilized. But I want the viewers to really get that there are all kinds of different contact experiences. I'm sure Dave's, Aurora's, and mine have very little similarity, but what unites us is the influence that these experiences have had on us to help us with our personal journey, but also for helping to bring about change within this world. So we got to be a bit mindful of our time, but let's start with you, Aurora. Why don't you tell the folks about what your ET contact experience was like?
Okay. There's so many I've had since I can remember. Some of my earliest memories being around probably age 3 or 4. Wow, it's like there's just so many, it's hard to kind of pinpoint where to start. But some of my earliest memories I can remember, and I probably have shared some of these in previous episodes, so I apologize for people that have heard these. But just to reiterate, some of my earliest ones, I remember being dropped in my bed, knowing that I was somewhere else, not having clear memory and coming back, but remembering when I got back that I was conscious before being in my bed. So I actually fell about 5 feet into my bed, and that happened on multiple occasions as a very young child. The other thing is that I had a difficult time falling asleep as a child. So I would stay awake for long periods of time. My younger sister shared a room with me. And so it was like inevitable almost every single night that I would have this experience. And this is just as a young girl, that when I could anticipate when I would have these experiences, and it was very regular for a long time, where my bed would start to shake. And I knew that that was indicative of, okay, here we go, something's about to happen. And the thing is that sometimes I would remember the experiences and then other times I wouldn't. It would be like in that transitionary point where that would happen, and then I would suddenly just go unconscious, but I knew that I was awake. And the other way that I knew this is that, if I had friends over, or if I were somewhere where I was sharing a bed with someone, there were a few occasions where they would also be aware that the bed was shaking at a certain period of time, but it usually wouldn't happen until about, midnight, 1, 2 in the morning when it would start to happen. So when that would happen, specifically when I was a child, I had dressers that had these sort of door knocker like handles on them, and they would, you could move them up and down. And that was another indication that I knew that it wasn't just my imagination, that it wasn't just like, my body making the motions in the bed or something like that, is that I could feel very palpably the energy and the sensation that was happening within the bedroom, and things in the room would start to move. And I know that sounds a little poltergeisty, but it didn't freak me out in the sense where I felt afraid or any kind of yes, it was on a certain level. My conscious mind wasn't fully aware of what was going on. So it was stirring for sure, but I never felt like I was in danger. It was just very hyper stimulating. So these little door knocker handles would flip upside down, and they would stay that way until the morning when I would touch them. And then all of them would just go bloom. They would just fall down. So, so definitely like magnetic anomalies and all different kinds of things like that would happen when I was younger. So as I got older, as I left that particular location, I grew up in Texas for part of my life. I moved to Wisconsin, and as some of you may have heard in other episodes, I was in an area where it was total mound culture, sacred sites. So this was like the energy that I was growing up in, and I didn't really have a full understanding of what all of that meant at that point either. But because of the energy that I was surrounded with, there were beings that were still kind of like checking in on me. So specifically at my parents' house, I would have multiple experiences. And I had these experiences in other parts of the world and as I was traveling and things like that as well. But one experience I'll share that really was quite pivotal was I was coming home, and this I was probably like, I had just started working, just started driving. I was working at living around Wisconsin Dells, so it's like a big water park, place, lots of lodges and things like that. So that's where I was coming home from, was working at one of the water parks, and pulled into the driveway. And my parents live in the country, and they're on about 2 acres, but behind their lot, there's a bit of farmland. So another probably 2 to 4 acres behind them. And then it's kind of sectioned off by a tree line. So as I'm pulling into the driveway, I'm staring at the back of the lot, and the house is off to the side next to me. And there is a craft, for lack of a better way to describe it, hovering at the edge of that tree line. It's not moving. There's no sound. But I just got this overwhelming feeling of awe, of warmth, of home. And I knew like that was my family. I just knew. And I don't know how else to describe it other than that. And so I sat there, and I'm just like in awe and just staring at this thing like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen now? Because when you have these experiences, you feel like the world is about to change, like it's the end of everything you've ever known, And so when these types of things happen to skeptics, because their whole life they've spent, fighting the possibility that these things are actually happening. And once you've seen something like that, once you've experienced something like this, you can't undo it. You can never go back. There's no undoing what just happened. So here I am in complete amazement and total awe. And I'm just like in this sort of paralysis, but not in a bad way. I'm just stuck on, in sort of entrainment with this thing. Then there's like a sort of a gap of time where there is this huge chunk of time that's missing, at least 45 minutes to an hour. And then I'm like, I look back at my clock, which, I don't know how long I was staring, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how long have I been sitting here? And then it occurred to me, I need to go inside and tell my mom and my aunt, who I saw my aunt's vehicle was there. So I knew they were probably having dinner or what, kibitzing, whatever. So I go inside, but as I'm going inside, I sort of feel like I'm floating, kind of gliding. And I still sort of feel like I'm in this trance-like state. And as I go in there, I'm talking to them, and they're in the kitchen, and, I'm trying to tell them, you need to come outside. Don't you understand? There's this amazing thing happening, and you need to come see it. And it was like, at the time, I'm thinking, gosh, this is so rude. They're not even acknowledging the fact that I'm standing there. Well, it didn't occur to me until years later that they didn't see me at all, that I possibly wasn't even really in the room at that time. So here I am still kind of like tranced out, confused about the fact that they didn't want to go see something that ordinarily, had I told them something like that, they'd be very interested in seeing. So I glide back to my bedroom at the time and sit on the bed. And I kind of am like looking around and I'm like, wait, why am I in here? I need to go back out and see this thing. So I glide back out of the house and I go out there and it's gone, of course. And then it was sort of like things sort of snapped back into reality and I went back in there and then I was talking to them. But it wasn't until years later when I'm rehashing this story with them that both of them say, I never remember you telling me anything about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, after having heard that from them and then getting into the field of hypnosis, honestly, this was what drew me to the field of hypnosis, was having the ability to be brought into states of regression where I could pull back some of these chunks of missing time that had occurred that I knew more happened than what they were allowing me to remember. And so through hypnosis, I was able to, pull out and extract a lot more from what actually happened in that particular experience, which is really heart-opening, mind-blowing. And it was from what I pulled back from that experience, it was a reunion with what I would call my star family, for lack of a better way to describe it. And the reason why it was, blocked out was because I had a really important mission that involved having children, doing things that, had I known and had I remembered what had taken place with them, not only this time, but on many, many, many other occasions, that I may not have wanted to follow the path that I was set on. But it was important that I do follow the path that I was set on, because they just didn't, want me to feel. Sometimes when we feel that connection and we feel how free we are outside of the realm of physicality, or what people would call the third or fourth dimensions, it's like, why would we want to be here if we feel what it's like in other states or on the other side of that?
Oh, yeah.
So, but they really wanted me to understand how important it is to be here, and that we're really bringing that energy through into this reality, into this realm and dimension, for us to be the way showers, the tips of the spear, so to speak, and to be that bridge for other people who are having these kinds of experiences. So I don't know how much time I have left here, but
well, I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to come back to you and get you to talk a little bit more about the experience. If you remember what the ET, what they looked like, are they, and then of course, how they influenced you, or if they have a message or anything like that. So how about if we move on to Dave now? Thank you, Aurora. That was very interesting. And I definitely have some similarities with some of my experiences. Dave, do you want to tell us about your ET experience?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, that was an amazing story, Aurora. And a lot of these things with ET intelligence I found are interdimensional. And so to be able to understand the energy grid, the earth grid, ether, things like that, I think is essential. I don't think you can understand them if you don't understand dimensions. And of course, me and Karen have many videos on that too, about dimensions. You guys want to check that out? Yeah, so for me, I've also had a lot of ET experiences. I don't get a lot of opportunities to talk about it, so I'm actually really excited today because, I'm mostly focused on astrology. Of course, I do a lot with Oak Island. Those are kind of my main two, and then of course, Ayurvedic medicine and principles of Eastern medicine and esoteric biology. That's kind of where I focus, but I've had a lot of ET experiences myself. And actually, even in the length of time that me and Karen have been friends, we haven't talked a lot about my ET experiences, which is true. We kind of just realized that before the show today. So I think if I were to really be able to focus on some of my early life, I probably have a lot of, well, I would call it like kind of astral experiences or etheric body experiences. It's hard to classify exactly what it is. And of course, I think as a kid, it doesn't really occur to you that anything is abnormal in any stretch of that term. It's okay. This is my experience tonight. Maybe I'll meet my friends wherever in the universe that I might go. So to a kid, I don't think it's really, we don't compartmentalize it as much, I think, as when we become adults. And because of that, I think it's integrated more, I think, in the younger years, and it's not necessarily something out of the ordinary. So in any case, I'm sure I've had plenty of experiences like that. I don't know if I could say if it was a dream, if it was a astral travel, if it was some kind of alternate reality or parallel dimension. I don't know how I would classify it because I can't really remember a lot of it, to be honest, but I know I've had lots of experiences before, let's say, my adult life. And then, many of them, most of them, I would say, would probably involve dream states of consciousness, whereas I wouldn't be in necessarily a waking state style of consciousness. It's more like slightly altered to be able to pull in some of these experiences. But I will say this too, is before I get to my main story here, is that I spent a lot of time in the woods as a kid. And when you're in the woods, and back then in the 90s when I grew up, there was a lot less even commotion, of course, less technology. There weren't cell phones. We didn't have them as a kid. I was probably one of the last generations that I feel fortunate to not have had to been burdened by that, to be quite honest, until later on, maybe, towards the end of high school for me. But when you get into the woods and it's quiet and you don't have distractions, there's lots of energy there. There's lots of consciousness there. Some of it's coming from the plants and animals, but some of it, and I didn't realize this at the time, but some of it's coming from, I would say, beings that I couldn't physically see, but I was communicating with them. And it's different all across the world. You get, I think, different, let's say, races of ETs, for lack of a better term. You have the fairy world, the fae world. You have the world of wizards and things and magic and all of these things. I mean, of course, there's demons and all this. And so I'm sure I had plenty of interaction with these worlds. But again, I didn't really know that because it wasn't out of the ordinary for me. It was just something I was experiencing. So the first real experience that was undeniable in terms of ET intelligence was in 2008 for me. That was also the first year that I really started to wake up to, let's say, higher consciousness, the real spiritual journey in terms of the life path. It really started to open up around 2008. And I've actually talked to quite a few people that had that experience start the same year, including Santos Bonacci, who's, of course, my friend. He's a great flat earth proponent and a wonderful astrologer, among other things. I believe he started in 2008 as well. So there, when we talk about that, you're thinking about earth conditions, you're thinking about cosmic conditions. Why this year? Why 2008? Why were the Mayans saying 2012? Well, there are reasons for it. There's huge reasons for it. And of course, from my perspective, it's astrological, depending on where you are in the cycle. So anyway, in 2008, I started on my first cross-country road trip, and I started out in Arizona. And Arizona by itself is incredibly spiritual and powerful, spiritually powerful. And in fact, in the whole Southwest of the United States, a lot of people would argue that it's probably some of the most potent spiritual energy in the United States, since I'm in the United States. And I found that to be true. I would say for me, and it's different. I grew up in New England, but Massachusetts is also a sort of a fully loaded experience. You're going to have lots of intense experiences in Massachusetts if you're open for that. It's different though. In the Southwest, I feel it's more ET oriented. In New England, it's more maybe dark magic oriented, I would say. Not necessarily, that's not always not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it is. I've had mixed experiences. So anyway, I started out this trip in Arizona in 2008, and my focus was to travel east. And I had never actually been to the South. I'd never been to the Southern United States before, and I grew up my whole life in Connecticut. So what I did was I started traveling east. I drove into New Mexico, and I went to Albuquerque. I believe I went to Santa Fe. I went to Las Cruces, essentially the major population areas of the state. I didn't have huge amounts of time. I had a limited budget, so I wanted to make sure I saw the main cities because you want to get a feel for the state, get a feel for kind of like what's going on in the largest areas. That was my perspective in the beginning. So I did those, and then I ended up going. Actually, I wanted to visit Roswell. And of course, it's incredibly cliche. I totally understand that. I was open to having an experience with a flying disc. I actually wanted to see something because at the time, I didn't know what I thought. I'd seen shows and like on A&E Network when I was a kid and stuff, and X-Files and things like that. And I actually still didn't know. I'm like, is this real or is this not real? I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea. So I was open to the experience, and that's one of the big things I think for having ET contact is that you got to be kind of open to it, generally speaking. If you're resistant, then it's going to be, well, it can go one of two ways. It's either not going to happen or it's not going to be a good experience. So I do encourage to be open to it. Make sure you keep your boundaries up. You want to make sure your energy field is protecting you. You don't want to go in without any protection. That's absolutely foolish. I would never recommend doing that. Be ready for it and be grounded for sure. So anyway, I was open to it. I can't say I was expecting something to happen. That wasn't like what I was thinking about at the time, but I did want to see something if it was there. I didn't want me to make it up as if, oh yeah, I'm the one that made it be there. No, I wasn't looking for that. So I'm coming into Roswell, and this is from the Northwest. I believe it's Route 284, 285, coming from the Northwest into Roswell, into Mexico. And first of all, it was one of the darkest skies I've ever seen in my life. I could see all the stars, and you could see the center band of the Milky Way and everything. It was absolutely brilliant to see this. So I'm coming into town. I'm probably, I don't know, 20 or 25 miles outside of Roswell. And the first thing that happened was, and again, I'm observing the stars because they were incredibly beautiful. And I don't think I'd ever seen them that dark in terms of the sky, being able to see all the stars in the sky. I'm looking up at the stars and I said, wow, this is really beautiful. No one on the road. It was just me. And I saw one car, I think, for 30 miles. And the person was going the other way. So it was very quick. Looking up at the stars, and I see a really large star. And I said, wow, I wonder what that is. And at the time, this was pre-astrology too for me, guys. So I didn't know how to identify planets. I didn't even know like where they were in the sky or where I should be looking and things. I barely knew the constellations, actually. So I'm looking up at this, what I thought was a star at the time, and it was really large. It was a very big star, and I was actually thinking to myself, I'm like, this is amazing. I didn't think stars actually were this big. So it looked fairly close, and I was looking at it, and it started to, what I would describe as, it started to oscillate. So it was essentially like shaking back and forth. I could see that it was not stationary, let me put it that way. And nothing is going to move that fast unless it's, over that period of time, unless it's like a comet or an asteroid, or again, of course, a UFO, or extraterrestrial craft. You wouldn't expect the moon to do that. You wouldn't expect stars to do that. Planes, of course, planes are going to do that too. But this was not like a plane. This was not a plane. I've seen planes move through the sky. I've seen blinking lights before. But anyway, it started to like, it was kind of moving up and down like this on like an axis, kind of shaking like back and forth or rocking back and forth. And I said, wow, that's very strange. I don't know what that is. And I was still very skeptical. But one of the things that started happening at the time is I actually started to develop this earache. A very strange experience. It was in the ear that was kind of facing this, whatever it was in the sky. And it actually was persistent for quite a long period of time as I was observing whatever was in the sky. So I'm looking at it. So it was at the right, and I'm driving in my car, obviously. It was at the right of my windshield, kind of up towards the passenger side through the glass there. So that was the side, again, as the side of my face that was facing this craft. So there's obviously some kind of energy that this was emitting. And again, I never, ever experienced anything like this before. I didn't even think it was possible. So I didn't even know what to think. I didn't even have a framework. So then what happened is it actually, trying to remember what happened first. Yeah, I think that's probably what happened first. So I'm observing it, and it shot to the other side of the sky in a time that was physically impossible. There's absolutely no way this could have happened. And then it stopped on a dime where, again, our craft do not do that. The planes, from the G-force, that would crush the occupants in a craft. If you're talking about a man-made craft, there's no way that's possible. Now, I suppose it could be a drone, but even with a drone, you're subject to physics. That doesn't happen like that. I mean, no, I'll put it this way. And I played video games as a kid. It looked fake. That's the only way I can explain that. It looked as if it was actually superimposed on top of the dimension that I was used to perceiving, so that it was like not subject to laws of physics. Let me put it that way, because that cannot happen. And then it was just, and it can move in the smallest little arcs. It can like trace anything it wants in the sky, and then it just stops. So it was way over completely at the other side of the sky. I mean, in my vantage point, it was probably at least 100 miles. I don't know how to really, I don't have the tools to measure that, but it was almost instantaneous. So what ended up happening was it kind of stopped there. It was oscillating again, and then it actually disappeared. It completely went black. It just completely disappeared from the sky. And then the next time I saw it, guess where it was? It was back on the other side of the sky where I first perceived the object of the craft up there. But I didn't see it move back. So that whole time, I said, wow, I just got my experience. And that was my first high-level ET experience that I had in my life. And then that night, for the next 5 or 6 hours, I could not get rid of the earache that I had. I was in a hotel room at the time. This was before I was camping and everything. It gets expensive. Hotel rooms, are not cheap, obviously, in cross-country trips. So it was probably like $60, $65, $70 for the night or whatever. And I couldn't get rid of it. And all I was thinking that whole night is like, I actually really want to leave this town in the morning. I went to the UFO, the Roswell Museum in the morning, and I got to experience that. I saw the whole air balloon hypothesis and all of these things going on over there. And it was just a very, very strange experience. And I do want to say, just to put this in framework to wrap this up really quickly, is that we do know that the White Sands Missile Range was opened in July 1945. And this is not something, I was not keyed into this at the time because I wasn't interested really. I didn't have an overt interest in ET intelligence at the time. So, but we do know that the White Sands Missile Range, which was the site of the first testing of the atomic bomb in July 1945, we know that that's just to the southwest of the crash site, of the actual Roswell crash site. So it's all in this small little quadrant. The Mescalero Native Reservation's right in between. The Lincoln National Forest is right in between. The Lincoln National Forest is actually where the Smokey the Bear campaign started. When there was a forest fire there. So it's all these interesting like pop culture things. It's all happening in this tiny little area. And then we know, of course, that the Roswell crash happened in July of 1947. And actually it was within a couple days of pretty much exactly 2 years after the White Sands Missile Range opened and the atomic bomb was tested in that range. So knowing what I know now and putting in the proper framework, I personally believe that the ET craft are there, and I don't know this, for a fact. I'd love to talk to people in that region who have grandparents that grew up there. But what I would say, just right off the bat here, is that the ET craft, I would say, are there because of the atomic bomb test. That's what I would say. I do know it's a very highly spiritual area and highly spiritually charged area, but to have a UFO crash very, very close. I mean, I don't know the exact miles, but maybe I would estimate maybe 50 or 60 miles away from the White Sands Missile Range, exactly 2 years after the atomic bomb was tested. I mean, come on. To me, that's almost a direct association. And that whole area, there's just all kinds of strange things going on. So to wrap it up for right now, I think that a lot of the ET craft that we see, and we have a lot of examples of this, they're actually monitoring nuclear ships, as with the USS Nimitz with that story off of San Diego. I believe that's a huge story. That's that pill-shaped craft. I believe it was a nuclear craft, and they were doing war tests and everything. We also have the Malmstrom incident in Montana, where you had, I think, 10 nuclear missiles that were underground. They were each turned off independently from each other. They had separate electric circuits. And at the same time that happened, there was a UFO craft that was seen over the skies that night. So this stuff happens all of the time. And also over in England, I think that was a nuclear site too in the 1980s, over in the east coast of England there. So there is an association between UFO and nuclear weapons, because for me, it's very simple. It's because you guys shouldn't be messing with this. That's what they're thinking, I believe. And if you're going to do that and you're going to tear through our dimensions and destroy, some of the framework that we use, also a lot of them are benevolent and they care about us, and they don't want us destroying the planet. This is there's a lot of the ETs, I believe, are stewards of the earth, and they're trying to make sure things stay safe. So that was my experience, and that was one of, I can't even count, at least 40 or 50 ET experiences I've had in my life. But yes, I've seen craft during the nighttime and during the daytime, specifically New Mexico. And again, I know it's cliche, but I've seen the most craft in New Mexico without a question. And I didn't even spend that much time there. I was only there for like a couple weeks total of my whole life, probably. So it's a very high probability. And, there's a reason for that. It's called the land of enchantment, I believe, for a reason. There's some really strict, you go to New Mexico, you really need to be on your game. You really do, especially if you're looking for spiritual activities. I'd be very, very careful. I would be respectful. Definitely, if you're curious, go check it out, go see what's going on. But if you're someone who's sensitive and perceptive, it's not a game. You want to be the biggest thing for me is you want to be respectful. I talked to a native recently, and he was telling me that, there's lots of demonic entities on lots of native reservations throughout the Southwest. And what he said, hey, as long as they don't come messing with us, we keep our distance, and we respect that they have free will, and we let them do what they're going to do. That's one of the big tenets, is that, you can't change all entities in the universe, but what you can do is protect your own energy and don't interfere with their life missions and their objectives, unless it's trying to physically or psychically harm someone. I believe we need to let entities do what they're going to do, because we don't want someone coming into our life taking away our free will just because they're uncomfortable or something like that. Well, just if I'm uncomfortable with the ET craft, I don't know what they're here to do. Maybe they just have more power than I do in my body. So I experience their energy or their gamma radiation from their craft or whatever, because I'm made of flesh and bone. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a lot of times more an instance of which dimension you're in and what kind of energy you're actually working with.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well said. Very interesting, Dave.
Right now is the perfect time to heal your mind, body, and spirit. But for some, it may be more difficult, as there are those that have experienced unexplained phenomenon, such as alien abduction and implantation. Many that have experienced this don't have anyone or anything they can turn to for help. Mainstream medical practices will not acknowledge the presence or treatment of these implants. They can be synthetic, holographic, energetic, or etheric. They can block your energy pathways in order to alter your feelings, behaviors, preferences, and limit your potential. Karen Holton has created the Quantum Health Transformation Program and the Alien Implant Remedy. The Alien Implant Remedy is a proprietary blend of essential oils, crystal frequencies, orgone energy, and guided meditation designed to work together to move energy and dissolve the implants. Due to current conditions, supply is limited, so check them out today. These kits provide the right combination of energetic frequencies specifically designed to disable and dissolve energetic implants that may be holding you back. Karen Holton also offers energy and wellness coaching, ascension workshops, Zendome's orgone generators, and spiritual support. Visit KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com or click the link in the description to find out more and get your alien implant remedy today.
So I'll just try to keep it short. My experiences, I'm actually from intergenerational contactees. For sure, I know about my maternal grandmother. My mother, I suspect, she was very much against all that, to the point of being so against it that it was like she's trying to hide something. And then, of course, there's me. And it's interesting, Aurora, you were talking about that bed shaking thing. I had that a lot as a child too. And it's been my understanding from my own experiences with the ET is that we agree to forget. It's not like some kind of mental rape where they go in and they zap us and remove our memories. We agree because we understand that this is not the time or the place, or for our own safety. And it's very hard to fit into society once you've had these incredible experiences, because you know there's so much more. And yet it's like everybody is blind, and it's a bit distressing, really. But I can't claim to be anybody really special or anything like that. It's just I had seen about 4 different kinds of what I would call spacecraft in my lifetime. There's quite a bit of activity on Vancouver Island, where I lived most of my life. But then while I was living on Vancouver Island, and I was in Courtney, which was the name of the town, one night I just started having these incredible experiences. And at first I thought I was dreaming, but every night it happened, and there was a continuity to the storyline and the experiences. The other thing too is I never saw a spaceship come pick me up and take me anywhere. That's why I thought that perhaps I'd gone crazy and I was making it up, or that I was dreaming. But as time went by, what was really interesting is that the time I was away was much longer than the physical 3-dimensional time here on Earth. So it would happen at night. I'd wake up in the morning in my own little bed, kind of totally perplexed as to what I had experienced, but I may have experienced being gone for 3 or 4 months. And although there's aspects of it that did feel very physical, I have no evidence whatsoever besides what I say. And it's not about making people believe me. It's about opening people's minds to alternative realities that the 3 of us have had, and many, many more. I've been told by my ET friends that there's millions of us that are doing this work right now, millions on this planet, but we don't remember. Many don't remember. And I guess, given my memories back, I don't have all of them, but enough that I'm actually stitching together a bit of a book about my experiences. So I just want to talk briefly about the kind of experiences I had with ET off-world. And again, please let me stress that I believe that the whole energetic, spiritual realm is totally intertwined with our 3-dimensional reality. So anyway, what I did was I was taken sometimes for different purposes. Sometimes I was in what I call the exopolitical work, where I met with elders, and they are different races, but we're all the same species. So the beings that I saw and interacted with were very much like us. So, for instance, if you had been living in white society and you'd never seen a person of color before, and you saw a person of color for the first time, you go, "Oh, isn't that an interesting difference?" But you don't feel alienated from them. Same what happened with me with ET. So there was the ambassador work, but then I also spent a lot of time learning to converse with them, because they don't use language, not anything like what we use. And words are a huge source of misunderstanding. They're symbols that have been created and taught to us to actually keep us, in my opinion, sort of subdued as to what our true power is. So So I spent quite a bit of time learning. And when we communicate, it isn't in English in our minds. We don't hear a voice. It's sort of a combination of sensations, feelings, emotions, symbols, abstract ideas, spontaneous knowing. And somehow we learn to interpret these sensations into meaning. And I also think it's really important for humans to stop taking a human-centric perspective on ET. These beings are so far advanced from us, we don't really understand them, even if we think we do. But one thing that's very clear to me is they not only mean us no harm, but they also believe in us and in our ability to evolve and to become more like them, because they are our next state of basically, if humanity got our shit together and evolved, we could be very much like them. And it's very, I found it to be very not scary, very loving. And after 3 months, it abruptly stopped. And then I only had one brief experience, but this one was clearly while I was astral traveling. And I went back to the big ship. And what was really interesting is they gave me intel on how humans can use crystals, orgone generators, and things like that to not only protect ourselves, but to remove implants, etheric implants, physical implants, implants that we have no idea they're there, and we don't even have the technology to detect them. But these have been put on us kind of to fetter us, or to, what do you call it when you hobble us, you know, when they put on convicts, they put those chains between their legs so they can't run away. So that was all very interesting. There's so much more to it, but we just don't have time. But it gives you a bit of an idea how all three of our experiences are quite different, and yet there's some real similarities. So what I want to do is sort of bounce it back to you, Aurora. And do you want to talk about whether or not you saw them, or what they looked like, or did you not have that memory restored? And also, what do you think their purposes for being involved in our lives?
Yeah. So the particular experience that I was sharing, the craft itself did not look like any craft that I've ever seen. It was arc-shaped, and it was separated into 5 equal sections. So there was a center section and then 2 outer sections. And it was sort of this glowing burnt orange color, like if you've seen a salt lamp light up. It was like that kind of dark amber glowing color. And I didn't remember what they looked like at the time. When I went into hypnosis and I started pulling back this information and going back into these meetings, I actually relived those experiences all over again. And their appearances, it's like that particular experience, their appearances, they wanted me to understand that they weren't physical in nature, but they were showing me whatever it is that I needed to feel comfortable seeing so that I could have some kind of relatability to them. So what I saw were these figures. They did have sort of elongated cranium areas, but mostly they were just like light beings. They didn't have, like, I couldn't see eyes, I couldn't see a nose and a mouth. I didn't see features in that way for that particular experience. But it was like a soul council, like a whole soul council was there, and we were having a meeting. And in fact, the craft itself, they shared with me, was actually like a stargate. So it was like a portal. It was an opening to, I don't want a blanket statement say like true reality, but like another reality, another version of reality where they mostly have their life that they're living in whatever realm or whatever form that is. And, you know, the message was just like love, really, like and that's just it. Like if I could encompass all of my experiences, even the ones where I did feel any kind of like, there were two experiences that I've had where I did feel fear, but in going into states of hypnosis and kind of trying to recover those moments, it's not so much an experience of fear as much as it was me not having a full understanding of what the intentions were and what it was that was happening, what it was that they were doing, what was happening to my body. And that's the other thing, is that they really have shared with me that they want to communicate that, like, they are another us. They are sort of our counterparts. And so as much as we really identify with this physical world in this physical form, this is only us part-time, you know? And so when quantum physics, you know, or physicists talk about, you know, the fact that our molecules kind of blip in and out of existence, where are we the other 99% of the time when we're not here?
Yes.
You know, we, in our conscious waking minds, we may only have memory of this realm, this plane, this reality, but there's so much more work that's being done on all of these different levels. And so, and that's where, you know, a lot of us are doing this work on the inner realms, in astral states, in the dream states, in etheric states. And so it's important not to discount any of that, because there's so much being done on the inner levels. And a lot of it really is remembering how to bring back from those states and from those experiences that reality of unconditional love that we can embody, because the change that we wish to see in the world, it has to start with us. And if we don't remember how to embody that frequency, the world's never going to change. And so if I could distill it into just like one punchline, that would have to be it. You know, that they really, it's like they bring us there to kind of let us know that we're doing the good work, you know, and this is our path and this is our true nature. And so, like, you know, for those of us that do remember what we're doing, because we're all star seeds, we're all hybrids, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. And it's okay that if we don't, but, you know, we all come from this, you know, galactic heritage, this, you know, the great central sun, whatever, you know, however we want to identify with that. And it doesn't have to be that it's from these specific ET races, but they're all intertwined, you know. And so, and they, you know, I think the more evolved they become in their consciousness, and we become in our consciousness and understanding, the less we identify with the physicality of it anyway. But the fun part is that we actually get to be here and experience what it's like to be in a physical body, and to start remembering and acknowledging the fact that we are co-creating all of this. And so the madness that we see on the outside that so enrages us sometimes, we have to remember that we are part of that co-creation. And so it is in our grasp, it is in our every breath, every word, every utterance, every emotion, every thought that we think, every feeling that we feel, you know. It is our ability to reshape and remold that experience for ourselves and for everyone else. But really, when it comes down to it, and this is another major teaching that I've had in these experiences, is that there's really only one consciousness, and it just expresses in many different forms.
Yes. I would agree with you 100%, even throughout all my ET experiences too. Dave, do you want to speak a little bit more to your experience?
Yeah, sure. I really just want to say, I'll say three things quickly. The first one is that I have seen what some of the ET bodies look like, because I've seen them in the clouds, actually. And this was also in New Mexico. This was up by Shiprock, New Mexico, which is very close to Four Corners. This is probably, I would say the top. This was the top visual experience that I've had with spirituality in my entire life. I physically saw with my eyes in the clouds again. And, you know, when you're like, you know, to Aurora's point, is that you don't be thinking necessarily about a physical form. if you're energy, you can actually take on the form of anything in the environment. So if you want to express yourself in a rock or a tree or, a tree trunk or something like that, then you can do that. And in the same way, you can do that in clouds, you can do that in the sky, you can do that with mountains. I've seen faces on mountains and things before, and all kinds of this. So it's all possible. But what my experience is that, there's many different species, for lack of a better term, just like how all of us humans look incredibly different. If we really think about it, I mean, yeah, we all have, we have the same general body structure, but we look very different. They're very, very different, especially when you start crossing continents and things like that. And I believe we come from different parts of the universe. But anyway, what I saw, some of them had heads that were very much like the E.T. Movie, in terms of like, it was kind of long coming out this way, long horizontally like that. And you can see the eyes, are on the outside. Some have the eyes closer to each other. Some have them further out in the head. And then the other ones were, again, I can't make this, I really can't make this up. Elongated heads going vertically, very, very tall heads, and some of their bodies, some of their bodies are tall, some of them are short. They were in all different directions in 360 degrees, facing all different ways. So the ones that I've seen visually were the traditional elongated head feature of the ET. And if it wasn't that, then it wasn't that. But that's what I saw in the clouds. And so I'm assuming that that's how they wanted to present themselves for me to see them. The second point I want to make quickly is that there was one story that I heard on a television program a couple of years ago that really changed some of my perspective about ET intelligence. And I believe for a while, especially the past 5-6 years, that, anything out under the sun is available. You can have any kind of energy, you can appear in any kind of way, you can live on any kind of planet. But before I saw this particular segment in this TV show, I wasn't really sure how completely I felt about the more benevolent species. But there's one account, I believe it's from the West. I wish I could remember exactly where it was, but I cannot, unfortunately. It may have been in Nevada. And there was a gentleman in a car, it was either maybe the 80s or 90s, something like that. He was driving the car. He looks to the side of the car. He sees the craft kind of not following him, but following alongside the car, kind of out in the field there. And he could see the windows were actually lit up, and he could see inside the window. And what he described, this really changed me. It's really changed me what he described. This is given that he's being truthful. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt right off the bat, because why should I doubt people? You're trying to share something. You do want to vet things for sure, as we've seen with what came out recently in the news here. But anyway, there was an adult and a child, and they were holding hands in the window. He could see through the window. He could see like the silhouette, I believe it was. I don't know if it was a clear pane glass, but they were actually waving at him. Like, hi, we're here, like, nice to see you. And I'd never heard of an ET experience like that in my life. And so that started to really shift how I thought about in terms of benevolent ET races, that there's, just like humans, there's good apples and there's bad apples. There's all kinds within species. There's all kinds of different energy set points. And so we should be open to the different spectrum. And then the last thing I want to say is that it's what me and Karen talk about this all the time, and I know Aurora talks about it often as well, is that so much of it depends on your frequency, your individual frequency. So if you want to have good experiences, you want to have good communication with otherworldly beings and intelligences, then you need to set up your structure, which is your mind and your physical body, to be able to accommodate for that. So, it goes back to the axiom that it's essentially look within for the truth. It's as above, so below, but look within. The answers you're going to be finding them inside. So we can do that. We can control everything in our bodies and our minds with enough discipline and knowledge. And that's what I would say, is that if you're having ET experiences and maybe you don't like them, get into a fast. Try to flush out your body, get your fluids clean. Go talk with your doctor, of course. You want their opinion. I would never say don't do that. But in general, you want all of the additives to be not in your body. Anything that's man-made, any kind of, food that's man-made. First of all, it's not a food. The food is when you pick it off the plant, or if you're a hunter, that you take it in the field. That's food. So you really want to be getting into clarifying everything in the mind and in the body. And I guarantee you, if you're truly successful with that, you're only going to have good experiences. The ratio will actually increase to either side depending on how clean your actual physical body is and how clean your heart is. So focus on the inside, if you want the more benevolent experiences.
Wonderful, wonderful advice. Now, very similar to that, Dave is, according to my ET contacts, they are not going to swoop down here and cause some kind of a rapture and take certain people up to their ship and take them off to a new world. It's not going to happen like that. And I don't mean to disrespect anybody else's experience, but clearly, that's what I've been told. And so one of the things that I was given was the Quantum Health Transformation Program, which is also a detoxification and educates people on how to think differently and how to unify their shadow and their light and their male and their female energies, and how to detoxify and how to even identify real food, because it's the body temple that needs to be able to hold the frequency that facilitates the communication. And this information, it seems to be raining down on all of us. It's just whether or not we are attuned to picking it up. And I actually even have I know this is going to sound way out there, but I actually think Dave, you and Aurora and I, and probably many more of us, had a pre-birth agreement to come down and be here at this time and to undergo hardships and lessons and, all of that for the benefit, not just of ourselves, but to stop, intergenerational dysfunction and to just start to be the change, show that it's possible and that we as imperfect people can go on that route. So, I agree with both of you. The message was very clear that we need to take really, really exquisite care of the temple body. And in that way, people make their own contact. So they don't need to worship me or you guys. They're going to make their own contact and they're going to have their own experiences and their own learning curve. And so Aurora and Dave and we're here to help you. So doesn't matter where you are on this journey, whether you're just waking up for the first time and you're finding that you don't know who to believe and what rabbit hole to go down, or if you've had ET experiences, maybe you've had some negative ET or paranormal experiences, and you want someone to give you some support and suggestions. And then, of course, all three of us are very big on lifestyle. And it seems to be that's what nobody wants to hear. They all want to listen to the ET enthusiasts that are saying, oh, yeah, they're coming from, I don't know, wherever. And they've kicked out all the grays and they're cleaning out the underground, all this stuff that's going on. And I'm going, wow, my experience is so different to that. And I'm not saying they're not telling the truth. But now people like Corey Good are coming forth and saying, yeah, they weren't telling the truth. So I think that's a good thing. And I think in the long run, because it's clearing the way for those that are having the higher spiritual experiences to then move to the fore and start helping people understand our strength, our power, our unity, the power of our love. So our time's gone by way too fast. I'm going to have you both on again so we can pick up where we left off, because this is actually a pretty huge topic and becoming very popular as far as other people are waking up to their own experiences. And they're looking to those who not only have gone through some of it, but we're pretty grounded and we're pretty on track with our experiences. So I guess we'll just do one more go around. And if you have any, last minute messages for the viewers, and if you want to say again where people can reach you, and of course, the contact information will definitely be in the description below. But for those that are listening to this on an audio podcast, they might actually appreciate hearing where they can find everybody as well. So I'll turn it over to you, Aurora.
Thank you. First, thank you so much for having me on the show again. I just love being a part of the conversation, and so deeply am grateful for you and your work. So I just want to emphasize that. And as far as parting messages, I would say one thing that really stuck out to me and was really important and kind of highlighted in what you were just describing a moment ago was that one of the experiences that I had was I was on the phone with my mom, and I had recently been having contact, and the message that they were sharing with me is that you need to understand, and again, like, it's not like a verbal communication. These are like transmissions that come in for me, sometimes visually, sometimes in blocks of information. Even when you were describing like, technologies, that was something that had come in for me really huge at one time when I was probably like 18, 19. I was getting all of these downloads for like free energy devices and all kinds of things like that. And, I'm interested in sharing things that I know are going to help humanity. And that's my purpose for being here and for sharing this work. But I'm on the phone with my mom. I'm standing on the front porch, and my son's out there with me. And, I'm kind of just like pacing the front porch, and I'm telling her about this experience of them sharing with me that we need to understand that we're all equal, and that it's almost a disservice for us to put them on a pedestal and to think that it's something to attain, or that's something that's unattainable or far reaching to be like them. And they want us to know, like, this is an equal exchange. This is an experience of us coming to terms with the fact that we all have different roles that we're playing. And so us being in this particular incarnation is so valuable and so important, and not to devalue that in any way. And for us to be open and awake and aware of our interactions with them is just helping that exchange and fluidity to kind of come online in a way that really helps to bridge the worlds, bridge the dimensions, and bridge that energy into this realm. And another thing that I would say in regard, and the funny thing that happened was I'm telling her about this on the phone. And after I say that, there's a voice that sounds like it's probably a foot away from me, of this woman that says, hello. And it was just as simple as that. It was just hello, but it was next to me. And my son turned around and goes, Mom, who was that? Like, where did that? Because no one was walking past on the road, and it sounded like it was on the porch next to us. So it was like they were just popping in to say hello. And I'm like, wow, it's just amazing. It's just so amazing that we can have these experiences and have such deep takeaways. But the point of it is to really exercise those muscles as often as we can, so we can really remember how to be in that fluid state of love, of unconditional love, not of like romantic love or of conditional love, like based on circumstances, but to really allow ourselves to be an open temple and vessel for love to flow through us. And that's what's bringing that magic into our lives, into the world. And so for me, one thing that I might suggest to people is just try opening your heart, getting into that frequency of love, and sitting down and either doing a voice recording or journaling or doing something where you are consciously connecting to those galactic counterparts of those interdimensional, or I like to say omnidimensional, because it's in every direction, counterparts or aspects of ourselves, or, the divine, and allow that to really stream through you and see what happens. You can even do this in painting or, body movement or however it is, and see what happens, because they are there, they're ready to express and to share, and they're just waiting, and to me, there's really not a lot of separation for the most part. Now, I think there are some beings that take on more physical characteristics, and I have seen those too, that have showed up bedside, and they are far more physical than the one I was describing, where, that it's more like a light body. But regardless, they're there and available, but it takes our asking and inquiry and tuning in with them. It's like, if we're on a different frequency than them, because we're always sort of like seeing them as something unreachable, we have to get into that frequency to be able to have that communication, even have it be possible. So, and so I also want to just emphasize what you were describing with the body temple and the lifestyle being of the utmost importance. When I started my spiritual journey, that was one of the main things that I knew I had to change immediately, because that was crucial to me actually having more vivid and more lucid experiences. And I was blessed that I had, somewhat health conscious parents that helped to, keep my body fairly open, at my younger years. But that's a huge thing. And not to see it as a hindrance to change something or to eliminate something, but that it's going to be an enhancement. And so, and you're going to have so much more appreciation and respect for, the fresh food that you are consuming, and seeing it as also sentient, like life.
Yes.
And when you look into, like, I'm not trying to go on too broad of a train of thought here, but even in like the Essene Gospels, they talk about like the angel of earth, the angel of water, and you're really seeing it as taking into you that sentient life and those energies of purification of the sun, of the earth, of water. And it's like, I get to do this. And also, plugging what Dave was saying as well, talking about the importance of fasting. It's just as important to give ourselves a break from the physical as it is to partake in the healthy part of the physical. So it's like, to have that balance is so crucial. So again, I'm so grateful and so blessed to be here with you both. Dave, also, your work is so amazing, and I'm so grateful for you and for our connection here. And if anyone would like to reach out or get in touch or have a session, please come visit me on my website. It's divinealchemytemplearts.com. And I also offer a number of free videos and sound healing experiences on my YouTube website. So please look that up under Aurora Alchemy, and that's ALKHEMY on YouTube. So thank you again so much.
Oh, my pleasure, Aurora. Always a pleasure to have you on this show. One thing I can say about you and Dave is you're authentic. And oh my gosh, it's just so easy to communicate with you both, to learn from you, to share ideas, information. It's lovely. So Dave, do you have any last minute things you want to say, messages to humanity? And then of course, where people can find you, very important too, and any services or the offerings you have as well.
Yeah, sure, Karen. Well, I just first want to thank both of you for being great people, great humans. I fully support the services that both Karen and Aurora offer as well. So I fully would support them. If you guys want to go see, if they're more in line of what you're looking for, I say go for that. I want people to go to who they feel drawn to. If you feel drawn to me, I'm on Facebook, of course. It's probably the best place to contact me, under Dave Petrella. That's Petrella. And it's the same for YouTube under Dave Petrella. I have a lot of content up there. I'm uploading more all the time. We have a lot going. I have a lot going on this week, actually, and next week too. So be on the lookout for new shows. And I also started my own podcast on my YouTube channel. And then also Instagram, Dave Petrella 12. If you would like to follow me over there. And I do provide full services in tropical astrology, which includes birth charts, relationship matching, business applications, choosing days that you're more likely to have success if you're looking for a good day to do something. And then I would say health tips, which is centered on pre-Ayurvedic teachings, which has to do with fasting and oils, which is the basis of medicine. I can provide that as well. And then, of course, spiritual guidance, if you just want to have a conversation and, have an ear to listen to that's not going to be judgmental. And I can provide where I think it's going to be, through my experience the past 15 years, where I think it's going to be best for you to find success. Again, it's about you. It's not about what I want to do. It's about what's going to be best for people. And I think all of us here have that in common, and we're all for humanity. You know, we want to do what's best for everyone. And the more people that we have, like Karen said, you know, authentic people trying to help each other, that's the world we're going to create. So we have to be, even if there's resistance right now, you know, maybe it's not so easy necessarily out there right now. You know, I don't care. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. You know, I'm here for people. That's what I believe in. I will always believe in that. And so the more of us that can do that, we will change the narrative for sure. So that's where to find me. Please send me a message. Don't hesitate to do that if I can help you. And then the closing statement I want to make is really that, you know, spiritual experiences are open to everyone. It doesn't matter your walk of life, where you're from, your life experiences. So, you know, and I'm not I would say overly focused on ET contact, but it's an important part of the puzzle, you know, about what's happening and where we are and who we are, where we're going. So I basically want to know everything about everything, if that's possible. So the ET contact, that's part of it. And it's important. Don't feel, you know, I just encourage people to realize there's a lot of people out there who have had contact, and don't be ashamed of it. You know, it's just a part of the spiritual grid, and it's probably going to be an enhancement to your life if you're open to that experience. Definitely be open to it, and share it with people that, especially people that will be receptive to it. You know, I know it's hard to do. It's not necessarily an easy thing to come out and say, yeah, I saw a craft, or I saw an alien in my room or something. But, you know, I'm a very down the center kind of person. You know, I some people would say, yeah, Dave's really left field. I really don't see it that way. I'm a scientist. You know, I look at information, I try to patch things together. So, hey, if I see it, then I saw it. Okay, no big deal. You know, if there's a massive craft that's floating over Area 51, fine. You know, it's like, it's not going to affect what I believe and what I'm trying to do on this planet. And also, in some cases, it's not even my business. If this is another civilization or another intelligence, they have free will, you know, in some ways, just like we do. So it's up to them, you know, it's up to us. Carve out the life that you've imagined for yourself, you know. And the last point I would make is that be good to each other, because that's really what we're here to do. So yeah, you know, keep your free will, value your free will, but don't be hurting others along the way, you know. And if I don't make another dollar for the rest of my life, if I know at the end of the day that I go to sleep that I've not hurt people specifically, and I'm not projecting it out there, I've already succeeded. You know, this is not the only life, and when we move on to different places, I do believe there's a reward for that. And I don't do it for the reward. I do it because that's who I am. You know, some people might be doing it, be like, oh, I want to get out of this, I want something better. But for me, it's actually that's actually who I am. And I actually believe that about Karen and Aurora as well. That's who we are.
Absolutely. And well said. Well, it's been an absolute joy and blessing to have both of you on the show, especially at the same time, and we'll continue this conversation in the future. I highly recommend Dave and Aurora to the viewers as well. You're going to just find them so easy to work with. So I do encourage you to check out the links that are in the description below. And I want to thank both of you, Dave and Aurora, for making the time for me today, and for being on the Quantum Guide Show. And just thrilled to bits to have you as part of my personal community. And looking forward to working with you both in the future in a variety of ways. And I also want to thank you, the viewers, for making the time to watch and or listen to this podcast. I appreciate you very, very much. I want to send out much love and light to all of you. Hope you have the best week ever. And we'll see you next week on the Quantum Guide Show. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for joining us on the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube, Odyssey, and Telegram channels. Like this video and share it with your friends. You can also find the Quantum Guide Show and my other podcast called Aliens and Astrology on the Forbidden Knowledge News Network. That's www.forbidden forbiddenknowledge.news. And while you're at it, check out my website, www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com, where you will find some amazing products and services and an abundance of free resources to help you with your journey. All of the links are in the description below. And in the meantime, until we see you next week, keep up the good work.
Splendor into endlessness puts all my inner strife to rest. For time gives birth to hurriedness. It all makes sense, well, more or less. And the sages put me to their test. With heart and soul, I do my best to find the answers to my quest. I wonder and I must confess, I don't know where it comes from, but I know it's okay. If this is all an illusion,